guest today, Yasmin ANGOE, is an English teacher who serves as an instructional coach for virtual teachers. She also works as a freelance developmental and copy editor. Yasmin was the recipient of the 2020 Ellender Taylor Bland Award, and her debut novel, Her Name is Night, has created a real buzz. Yasmin, welcome to Thriller Talk.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're thrilled to have you here today. So, congrats on the success that you're having as you enter the world of fiction. I really respect the fact that you have strong editorial skills. Sometimes it can be really difficult to be objective about your own work. I think everyone sort of suffers from that. We're so close to it. And it's much easier to help other people with their edits. Now, given that you're an expert, do you have any advice or techniques that you can offer to help people analyze their writing objectively so they can pull back from it?
Oh, yeah. So one thing I would say, and one thing that I do for myself really is to be very, very intentional about reminding myself that you have to step away from it for a little bit to give it some breathing room, and then when you come back to it, you need to really think of it like in the third person, like this is it, my baby, my thing. I have to see it with a new set of eyes. If you got to be honest with yourself, is what I think I would tell people. It's what I, like I said, tell myself. I've done it. I've lived it for over a decade when I'm teaching my students, because that's what I've also had to tell them. About the audience and trying to, what is the message that you're trying to get through. And so when you're reading or editing your work, you're trying to make sure that everything you have in there is working towards getting that message through to your reader and making that message as crystal clear as possible. So it's a little bit easier for me because I've had all this time doing it, and I've dealt all the time with people who are, kids and adults who are very, very particular about their work. And so that has helped me with mine to be like, okay, you're not going to be, this way. You know that this is the thing that you have to do. It doesn't make it easy though, because when the editors do come in with their, notes and things, I still have to, put it down for, like, I won't read it right away. I'll like wait a few days before I, open it, because I know I'm going to be sensitive about it. And that gets me ready so that when I go in, I'm not going to take it personal what they say, because I know it's a business.
That's really good, mature attitude, which I respect.
I'm trying.
So Yasmin, like you, I work full time as a freelance editor when I'm not a book spy, and then recently became an author myself. So,
Ooh,
what was your
congratulations.
thank you? What was your experience like? I'm going to speak to mine. Being an editor and then being a writer, I found out that I'm the biggest hypocrite ever because of the way I would edit and give advice and tell people you have to have the outline and everything else. And then as a writer, I found out I broke all those rules. Um,
Mhm.
so when you went from editing to being an author, did you find that you did follow your own advice, or did being an editor and then trying to become an author, was that harder because of your background?
So it was actually easier because I was always a writer first. And so becoming an editor really gave me perspective on my writing, on how things need to be, because that's something that, those are the discussions that I had to have with the writers that I was working with, and with my students and things like that. So, when I was just writing, I would just write and it just be, whatever. And then when I became an editor, I saw, oh, okay, so this is where, this is a little murky, and I maybe this is what I need to be doing. So I saw a lot of the things that I was catching as an editor with other writers. I
Mhm.
saw that in my own writing. And so that helped me, I think, to make, with this particular book, especially, to make it more like clear what it was that I was trying to say, and make like this, because to me, the most important thing is the story. I want to tell a good story. And so the being an editor, being a writer first and then an editor, helps me look at both perspectives and really take that into account for myself.
No, that's a brilliant answer. Yeah, I love how you can sort of change that mindset. So Nina Knight is a very strong female protagonist, which I love, and she has an incredible backstory. So can you please share the inspiration behind this memorable heroine?
Yes. So, like you, I love a strong female protagonist. And I also love this genre of storytelling, period, of writing, reading, watching TV, movies, and things like. So this is always something that I've loved. Is action, thriller, mysteries, horrors, things like that. And so what I wasn't seeing when I started this story was a lot of female protagonists that were doing the kinds of things that Nina does, and also that looked more like me. I was reading James Patterson and his Alex Cross series, and that was really my first time that I saw an African American, person in the lead in this position of, big time FBI, psych. I think he was doctor and stuff like that. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like I can actually, do this, but I'm gonna make it a woman because I also love, Mission Impossible was one of my favorite movies, and I was like, I can do a female Ethan Hunt.
Yeah.
Like I even named one of my kids by that character. And so because I love it so much, Tom Cruise, hook me, let me know. Hello, hi. So that was really my inspiration was I want to write books about, women, but I want to write books about women in these genres that I don't really see that often doing these things. And not only am I going to write about a woman, I'm going to write about a woman who's not even from America, and she's going to be doing all these like real kick-ass things, and she's all these things that I like to see in a good movie and a read in a good book that just has my heart pounding and stuff. And I want her to do all the things that the guys can do, but even better because she's a woman and she has layers to her. Because I also want, like I said, a good story. So I want a story that has layers. It's not just about, the bad guy. It's about this journey of, this thing. How does she, rebuild herself? How does she, take care of the things, the people that she has grown to love and care for, while also managing, assassinating people. So
I love it. You're my kind of woman. My main character is a lead kidnap negotiator who is also kick butt and does rescue operations and such. So I love this kind of stuff. And you write action very well.
thank you. Thank you very much. I study it all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's a tough thing.
Yeah, it is tough. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we talked a little bit about your background, both as a teacher, an editor, now a writer. What I want to know though is when did you know that through all that you wanted to become an author, and what made you finally take the plunge to sit down and write your first manuscript?
Well, so my very first manuscript was, gosh, it was over 20 years ago, and it was women's fiction. And so I was writing before we were emailing queries and things. If y'all remember snail mail, and you had to, print out the whole thing and then send it to the agent and stuff like that. So that was me. And so that's really when I wanted to like really get into writing, but it didn't really work out for me at that time. And then we started a family and everything, so I put that away. And so it wasn't again until I moved down to South Carolina in 2009, and just had a, life changes, and I decided, I am ready to pick back up what I really really love, because I needed to write, and it was helping me to be, it was cathartic to me. I was dealing with the loss of my dad around that time too, and that also is part of like the inspiration for my story. I really wanted to highlight his culture, so it was like a perfect storm of all these things that just made me say, okay, yes, then it's time to just pick up the book again and really make a real go of it this time. The kids are a little bit older, so let's try it. And then that's really what kind of got me started. And I had to relearn everything about writing and everything about like communicating with people. I had to learn what Twitter was because I really wasn't on Twitter until then, and how to communicate through Twitter and these writing groups and all that. Because all by all these years, I was doing it really on my own. I had no one to talk to, no other authors or anything. So it's really in the past few years is when I really got into it and started to figure out what my own personal tribe needed to be in terms of writing.
Yeah. Wow, that's very powerful. And it's amazing the journey you took. Sometimes also the life experience we have, we need that almost to tackle the new book or the new idea that we're going to address. And I think that it sounds like for you, all those years of living really enriched the book.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely, I agree with that. Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
I think that that's why you tend to see, if you think about it, bestsellers tend to be a little bit older, because I think people work on their life experience and have insight into the human, kind of behaviors and observation, and then it's later when they can kind of kind of capture that on the page. And I think that with life experiences, we are able to do that more and more.
Hmm.
But given this is your first novel, what is the one kind of poignant lesson that you say that you've learned through this experience?
Ooh, yeah. So my lesson that I've learned is really, and I sure hope it doesn't sound cliche, but it's really not to give up on yourself. Um, and that your success could look like, it could look like anything. Success could just be that you're still continuing to find joy in writing or in whatever it is that you do. Because before I won the award and right before I even got my agent that I have now, I was nearly about to quit. And I, had said, I am going to quit because I had all these issues with, finding a new agent, and everybody, was rejecting me, and I couldn't figure out what it was that was wrong with the story that was so close to my heart that I just knew you all will love this story if you just give it a chance and stuff like that. And everybody was telling me no. And so, you can only take to no too many times before you break. So I was at that breaking point where, I was just going to like hang it up and say, maybe, I'm not as good as I thought, and maybe this just isn't for me, and I'll just keep teaching or whatever. And so when I got my agent right before I won the award, that was huge to me. Even when I was applying for the contest for Eleanor Taylor Bland Award, I didn't think I was going to win. One of my friends said, "Oh, there's this contest coming out," and I said, "Well, I'll try it. I'll try this just one more thing." So that's my lesson: is always try just one more thing, because that's what I told myself. I'll just do this one more thing and then I'll quit because I'm not going to win this. And so that's what I did. And this one more thing happened to be the thing for me. But even if I hadn't won, and I had quit for a little bit, I know I would have come back to it because writing really brings me joy. So it's always just one more thing. Like, don't give up on yourself. And I'm sorry if it sounds cliche, but I only say what
No,
I know is true for myself. So I really believe it.
it's so true. It's a great answer because our whole industry, but this genre especially, is filled with people with similar success stories. I mean, you look at some of the biggest names from Grisham to Flynn to Clancy. They couldn't find publishers. They couldn't get
Mhm.
agents. You know, and I'm always reminded that the industry doesn't even know what it wants until you show it to them.
Yeah.
And why is it that
That, yep.
60 agents will pass on something and and then one loves it and wants it just as it is and sends it out and people love it, you know?
Mhm.
So I think that's a great answer and it's a mantra to live by. Always one more thing,
One
and
more
that might
thing.
be the thing, like you said. So look, my next question I want to ask you, I'm dying to know before we got on with you, I guessed what your answer might be, by the way. So as a
Okay.
teacher, I'm asking you as a teacher and an editor,
Mhm.
what is the biggest mistake that new authors make, in your opinion, from a writing standpoint? What's that one rule they always break?
Um, I think the rule that they break sometimes, it's either they say too much or they say too little. And like, they make assumptions for the reader. And for example, if they say too little, they may have a lot of maybe dialogue and things like that, but they don't set the scene. I'm gonna reverse that. My thing that I've seen is setting the scene, and that's something that I speak about with my my writers that I work with is you have to set the scene. And so that's also something that I always tell myself. And it's so some people have said, "Oh, Yasmin, your writing is like really visual. I can picture it." That's because I'm setting the scene in my head, and I know that that's one thing as a reader. So I'm talking, as a fan of books, period, of literature. When I'm reading a book, when I'm giving a book my time, I want to be so engrossed and so immersed in it that I can. It's like a running movie in my mind, and I can see what the characters are doing. I can feel what they're feeling, and it's like I'm in their shoes. And so when I'm setting the scene and when I'm writing, that's what I want for my readers to be totally immersed in that experience with that character, because I feel like that's how they'll really understand what you're trying to tell them in the story. And so that's one thing that I have seen with writers and even with myself, because it takes me a little bit of time before I can set the scene the way I'd like it to be, is making sure that you set the scene and that not only do you have dialogue, but you have given them some background visuals that they can imagine as these characters are speaking, or you don't have so much, visual that you aren't, including dialogue, and you're not including some things that a person might do, like, playing with their hair, or, something, a nervous tick or something like that. You've got to make them human. So you've got to set the scene for your reader.
I totally agree with you. It's a great answer. I've always found it fascinating that when you're the editor working with a writer and you're reading something and you ask them, so what's like it's a person in the office. What's their office look like? They can usually tell you exactly what it looks
Hmm.
like. And I always say, write that, because
Hmm.
none of that's
Hmm.
here. And they always think it's there because it's so in their head they forget to put it on the page. And
Hmm.
so I think it comes back to show versus tell, and showing
Hmm.
before you tell. And I think that's the one big thing that a lot of newer authors especially struggle with
Yeah.
is before they set the scene, they start telling you everything. And
Hmm.
we need to see it. You got to show them first.
You got to show it. Yep, that's right. That's it.
Well done, you guys. This is becoming a good writing class for people watching. Um, and also, I always think that you should ground the reader as whose point of view you're in the first sentence and where they are, so that they can immediately picture that instead of feeling like there's this, kind of ethereal, situation going on. I love that grounding.
Hmm. I like that. That grounding. I have to remember that. Yep, I like that.
So I understand that you love to cook, which I also love to do. What are some of the favorite dishes you like to create? And do you find cooking meditative and good for brainstorming?
No, actually, this might sound weird, but the where I brainstorm the best would probably be right before I wake up. I actually literally wake up to words in my head or a story, or like in the shower for some reason. I guess it must be the water, and it just opens up your mind. But when I'm cooking, I actually am listening to like an audiobook of someone. So the cooking time for me is the time for me to get out of what I'm thinking in my books, or whatever, and to just be in someone else's story. And I just love, I've loved cooking for, I don't know, since my 20s or something like that. At one point, I wanted to, be a culinary chef, and I went to a culinary school for that. That was before I became an English teacher, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So I've always loved cooking. And now, when I cook, I really, I don't do it that often because I'm old now and I'm tired of cooking for people. But like when I do, I really find joy in it, and I like to eat too. I love food, and so I'm like, well, nobody else here is gonna make it, so I guess I better if I want to eat well. So,
So let's say Ryan and I are coming over for dinner. What are you going to treat us to?
what would I treat y'all to? That's a good question, because I might make something from my culture. So from my Ghanaian culture, I do like doing that. So one of my favorite meals is red, which is like a black eyed peas kind of stew, with fried plantain and that's one of my favorites that I might make. Or jollof rice is something that it's not, I love it. And most people have tried it from in one form or the other. And so, I might make that. And if we're talking about like Americanized food, like I can make a real good rotisserie chicken. Um, so with some green beans, the fresh ones, not the canned ones, because those are yuck, and maybe some Brussels sprouts. I've started to like Brussels sprouts roasted. And so I've been doing a lot more with Brussels sprouts. I'm not 100% sure about them, but I think I kind of like them. Do y'all like Brussels sprouts?
No, that's the new fad thing. And my kids convinced me they would be good if they were just
Hmm.
made a different way. And I
Hmm.
thought unless they're magic Brussels sprouts, that's gonna be a no. It was definitely
Hmm.
no for me. But I like to eat. We should do next year. We should have you back for your next book and shoot this on location. And
Hmm.
Yes, we're
Like
game.
cooking with Mina and Yasmin. Yes, I know.
Yeah. But Ryan, I would challenge you to like because Brussels sprouts have become huge, and what I find really, really helpful is to spray them with balsamic vinegar and a little bit of olive
Mm,
oil, and then put them in an air fryer. They come out tasting like something otherworldly.
yeah,
well, my kids
when they're
wrap them in
crispy.
bacon, which is kind of cheating because anything wrapped in bacon is usually pretty good. But I might draw the line at Brussels sprouts. So, but if I had to eat that to eat everything else you said, I would be the first one in
Mhm.
line for the Brussels sprouts.
Okay,
100%.
we'll just put two on your plate. That's okay.
I'm in. I'm in. Yes, and what was the moment like for you when you got the call from your agent that you had an offer? That moment that you knew you were going to get a book deal. What was that like? Can you take us inside that moment?
Yeah, that was totally surreal, and I still I can't believe still that it happened. I can tell you exactly where I was too. I was in my car. I was in the driveway of one of my friends because she had gone out of town and she needed me to pick up a butcher box from her front porch. So I was carrying a big old box of, frozen steaks and stuff. And I had just put it in the back of my car. And my daughter, my high schooler, she was sitting in the passenger seat and she said, your agent called you. And I was like, she called me. Oh no. Because the first thing when I get a call like that, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what, rejection did I get? Or what is she about to tell me? And so I sat in my friend's driveway and, received the news. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And, I looked at, my daughter and I was just like, I just, there's someone's just giving me a deal for this book. And she was like, oh my gosh, mom, that's so cool. And then she goes back to her phone because she's like, I don't care, but so like I was just in the driver's seat, just like, oh my, and I couldn't move. So I just sat in the driveway for a while because I really didn't think that this was going to happen. And I thought this is just a dream. Like, I can't believe, this is so it's even today, like sometimes I'll just wake up and I'll be like, is like this my life right now? Like people really like this? Are they sure? And or is this a total imposter syndrome all the time?
That's beautiful. And how old's your daughter? You say?
She's 16. She'll be 17 in 2 weeks.
Right. So she was really casual about it, even though she thinks mom's really cool.
Yeah, well now she does because no she was just like, yeah, okay, you're interrupting my YouTube. But now she's more like, when she's actually saw the books, and that'll be like the rest of my family, they're like, oh, so this is a for real thing. So I'm like, yes, I think so, yeah.
For real, all right. So
Mhm.
speaking of family, it's a wonderful theme in your novel, and I really like how you delve into, there's a family you're born with, there's a family you might be adopted into, there's a family that you choose because, sometimes you find family members that aren't even related to you. So,
Mhm.
why did you? Can you delve into why you chose this as a strong theme?
Sure. So it is because I was going through that myself. That was right about the time that my father had passed, and my daughters and I were in a brand new, or my kids and I were in a brand new location. We didn't know anybody here in Columbia, South Carolina, and so I had to find, who was going to be like my tribe, so to speak, who, these people that I needed to meet and who was going to be with me in my life. And it took a while. So I really had an appreciation for when you go and you find the people who are really good in your life and who helped you. And that, I mean, I found, men who were two of them in particular who kind of stepped into that father role for me, like Noble did for Nina, and became like a father to her, was a father to her. And so they became a father to me, in the absence of my dad. And I had a great relationship with my dad. And so everybody that I've met here in South Carolina is like the found family, the family that I chose. And I am so appreciative of them. And I love my biological family that I was born into, and my blended family for my stepsons and things like that. And so family was super, super huge. But above all, I really wanted to celebrate the relationship of family, but also the relationship between, kids and their dad, or a daughter and, her dad, because that's what I was thinking about my dad. And then I was just thinking about how happy I was to have had the time that I had with him and what a great relationship we had. So I really, really wanted to celebrate him. And so you see him, you know, in all of those men figures in the story. You see, well, not all of them, the good ones. You see him, and I hope, and I'm glad. Thank you, because I really wanted that to come through with the whole family element. It's something that's super important to me, and something that's super important to Nina, someone who was in, a moment of turmoil, to have that that person extend this, kindness to her, and let her know that, hey, it's okay, just come join our family. Because that's one great thing about Southerners, is they're just like, come on and join the family, and there you are, you can't leave.
Love that.
I do too. That's a great answer. Yasmin, lastly, before we let you go, what's next for you?
So what's next for me is I just turned in book two, of Nina, and so I'm waiting anxiously for the revisions back, or the notes back from my editor. And I hopefully she's waiting until after the book launches, so that I don't have to like be all down and depressed about that. But I think she is. But so I'm waiting for that, so that I can kind of delve back into that, and get her just right, so that she comes out, I guess they said she's coming out again, her book two, next year.
That is
Perfect.
exciting. And I just
Yeah,
wanted to share with everybody how unbelievably amazing that Yasmin's book goes with our backdrop here.
it
Isn't that
does. See?
beautiful? So make sure you get yourself a copy of Her Name is Night. It's absolutely fantastic book, and you will thank us.
And tune in next year for the book two slash food special that we'll shoot on location with you, Brussels sprouts and all.
Yes,
Brussels sprouts and all, yes. We're gonna get Ryan to like it.
I think we
Well,
can.
I'll give it a shot. I mean, I'm not gonna promise that, but I will give it a shot. But we'll see. And thank you so much for coming on with us and hanging out. And look forward to for the full release.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Congratulations.
Thank you.